Hello and welcome to the Just Ride Snowboard channel. I'm Lars Horstman, and today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the rabbit hole of soft boot surf style carving. Surf style carving to me means riding above the fall line. I don't want to race down the hill changing edges quickly. I want to maximize time turning, and therefore I'm making use of the terrain. I'm drawing my lines across the hill. I'm really finishing my turns partially up the hill, setting up a top turn followed by a bottom turn. It's basically simply a surf-inspired style of reading a mountain. I got lucky. We filmed a few days ago with a bunch of friends, just randomly with our phones, and I saw later in the footage that they were standing at angles that showed certain movement patterns and the timing through the turn quite nicely. So I'll be taking this footage here and I'm gonna try to dissect it for you so you can get something out of it. This is all gonna happen on one of those surf-inspired powder fishes, fairly heavily tapered. And those boards actually require to be ridden in a slightly different way. The rider should be executing a slightly different weight shift through the turn to get the most out of it, and I will explain all of this in this video here as well. All right, let's take a look what's up. All right, not a bluebird day, but a very nice morning for groomers. Super grippy. It was pretty effortless to ride this run. It's kind of medium steepness, reasonable width. Like, yeah, you need a little bit of skill to bring the board around here, but it's not tight by any means. So let's have a look. I would like for you to take a look at upper body stillness or upper body stability for that matter. Take a look how there's very little happening in the shoulders. Everything's kind of happening from the waist down, and then also pay attention to edge change. Being pretty calm and stable and smooth through this entire run. There's no washing into the turn, it's instant edge engagement, but the flat base phase is calm, right? Like there's no hectic movements going on here. And the other thing also, I'm going to play this again right away. The other thing is turn symmetry in regards to turn size and turn shape. It's pretty even on heel and toe edge. Again, the conditions are definitely in my favor. It wasn't really challenging to do this. But yeah, take note of the overall calmness in the upper body. You can control yourself while you're riding by simply trying to keep your hands somewhat within eyesight or develop some form of consciousness for your hands. Often the backhand is like flailing behind people. That doesn't really help. Bring it forward, keep it level to the slope. That's very important. There's one moment on this run where I would like to explain one other thing, and that is how you really need to make sure you're stacked over your edge before you can increase edge angle. So let's take a look. This next toe turn, the filmer is in my way and I need to get around that person. And I basically have to adjust my flat base phase, my neutral phase between turns, make it a little bit longer so I can do my next toe turn a little further off to the edge of the run. And in order for that to happen, what I chose to do here is get the board on edge, and now instead of instantly engaging hips and knees and hips in that order, I'm actually waiting a little bit. See how my board actually travels across, and here, yes, I did put it on edge, but I'm waiting. I'm extending that line, right? The key thing here to take away is if I'm stacked well even with a low edge angle like here, if I have this all under control and I feel stable, that is my platform to then move and crank that board on edge. So taking time at the edge change, I cannot say that enough really. People focus on their turns. Oh, how do I get low? How do I get low? Focus on the edge change. I personally find that the magic happens in between turns. You need to be set up well for the next turn in order for that turn to become a good turn. So this whole carving thing is really a chicken egg situation. In order for you to execute a nice turn, you need to finish the previous one nicely. So where does this start, right? Like it's a chicken egg situation. But anyways, here I am slowly getting my weight stacked over the edge. And then from here onwards, it's action time. Now I'm like, all right, cool. If I tilt it on edge here, my board will actually not run into the person, but go past her. And boom, there it is, right? You see the hip. And also nicely visible here, shoulders do nothing. I'm getting my hands parallel to the slope. And in order for the board to get higher on edge, I'm using knees and hips. Right here, I'm pinching my outside hip. Left arm moves down along my front leg, somewhat towards the heel edge. I said this in another video, I'm a little stiff in that department. But you can see pretty well that all the things from here to here are lower body, right? My upper body isn't doing much. There's one other thing that you can see here, and that is a counter rotation of the hip. You can see from here that my right hip is actually coming forward. While the board moves to the right, my hip actually rotates a little bit. I'm opening up a little bit towards the nose of the board, which is technically a counter rotation. Now I hear two takes on this. Some people are saying, nah, that's not good technique. Other people are saying it's very efficient. I haven't really figured out yet whether there's a right or wrong. I can do both, but I do like this. And what I like about it is that it gets my back knee out of the way. If I did not make this counter rotation and I didn't bring my knee forward towards the nose, so there's a bit of a, I'm not trying to tuck my back knee behind the front knee. I'm more like pushing it towards the nose of the board and to the inside of the turn at the same time. And it ends up being more like, if you will, next to my front knee, but not really tucked behind it. I'm not really going that far. So the nice thing is, I'm really getting the board high on edge on this in this turn, although it doesn't look like it from this perspective. If my knee was aligning with my back, so I'm talking about my back knee here, was aligning with my back foot, like at my binding angle, I would be hitting the snow right here, right now. And I wouldn't be able to increase edge angulation any further. So that knee kind of needs to come out of the way. I can see how in an alpine stance where you have, God knows what, like 40 plus degrees on the back foot, this is not necessary because the knee is technically already out of the way. But in this kind of plus 12 on the back foot, I want my knee to get out of the way a little bit more, which I do achieve through this counter rotation from the hip. And the other thing that this gives me is it gives me the ability to actually pinch my outside hip to get my upper body more stacked over the edge. So if I didn't pinch my left hip in this image here, I would have much more weight on the inside of the turn, and my right hand, which is going to brush through the snow here in a second, would already be like hanging in the snow, right? So I need to stay stacked over the edge, and in a stance like this, 30 on the front, positive 12 on the back, this counter rotation does actually help me to get higher edge angle, because now my knee is actually hitting the snow, and without my rotation, it would have hit the snow much earlier. That's kind of a cool thing that you can see from this perspective. And then also you can see how I'm a little bit on the back foot to exit this turn. And I will play another clip here where I'll say another few things about being on the back foot that are more relating to this board rather than the moment in the turn. So yeah, that's all for this clip. Let's take a look at another one. All right, this is going to be some heel turn pointers. Let's see first the toe turn that goes, that comes before the heel turn that I'm going to explain. So I'm coming out of a heel turn here. Check out what my trailing arm, so the arm that is pointing down the hill here, my right arm is going to do. This arm is quite important, or that shoulder. So I'm initiating an upwards movement, obviously coming from the heels, right? Like I'm pushing onto the board, onto the heels, and I'm starting to straighten my knees a tiny bit. But there's a lot of momentum going down the fall line, right? And by keeping this trailing arm down, I managed to get back above my board, on top of my board. Some people are saying you get the board back underneath you with an up unweighted technique. So this would be called a crossover turn, because my whole body crosses over the board. I don't like the term or the wording get the board back underneath you. I think you should look at it as in you have to get back over the board. So I'm using this downhill momentum that I have, and I keep that trailing arm down. The other one is coming up, and this movement helps me to get back on top of the board, and I stop this movement right here. Now I'm flat base, and now the movement turns into the opposite. You can see already here that my new outside hand, which is my left hand, is instantly, when I change edges, starting to move down. So there you go. This is a very good frame. Knees are starting to push onto the new edge, while the upper body is instantly moving into the opposite direction. There, outside hand dropping, knees dropping to the inside of the turn, outside hand and shoulder moving to the outside of the turn. And that gets my upper body mass out of the turn. Here you can see how my hands are level to the snow, and you can see this arc in the body pretty well. So if I didn't have this arc from the feet through my legs and hips and torso, then my upper body, my head, my chest would be way further inside the turn, and I wouldn't really be stacked over the edge. You can see how I'm really stacked here. I don't even need to put a hand down. I can have all my weight on my edge. That's kind of the goal, right? Like, I get my hands in the snow quite a lot. I sometimes get my butt in the snow in a heel turn. I'm not really aiming for it. Any ounce of weight on hands or hips should be on your edge. That's kind of my philosophy. So, but the heel turn that I was going to talk about is coming now. Where does a heel turn start? Chicken egg situation again. I think it starts pretty much here. First of all, I'm looking at the line that I'm going to pick. My eyes are very clearly looking basically into the apex of the new turn, right? So now, where's the mass traveling from here? My mass needs to travel to the inside of the turn and down the hill. And I'm keeping, you can see this here, I'm keeping my outside arm, my left arm from the toe turn, I'm keeping it low. I'm keeping this arc of the body that I explained earlier. That helps me to stand up. my body is getting back on top of the board, and I stop this movement here. From here onwards, I do not want more upper body crossing or inside the turn. I actually want the opposite. So what's going to happen from here is that my outside arm, the new outside arm, which is my right one, is going to move down. And let's see how I engage the edge. So edge engagement is front foot, and I'm pushing into the high back. I am rotated into the turn from the hip upwards, clearly, like I'm looking, there you can see it, how my chest comes around and everything. I'm very much rotated into the turn, right? So that's important. And the other thing that is important in regards to the mass that you want to take away from the inside of the turn, that's your chest, right? Your hip should go inside the turn, but your chest needs to come out of it. Only way to do this, the only joint I have to help me with this is my hip joint. I need to come forward. I need to hinge forward. And important thing here, look how straight my back is. This is core strength. Hinging forward with a flat back rather than hunching. Once you're hunching, you lose stability in the torso. You want to have your abs on. Very important. Heel turns are pretty demanding for abs. So my whole upper body is straight, right? I'm not hunching. I'm hinging forward. And that trailing arm helps me. That's mass. It's swing weight, if you will, right? Like that swings to the outside of the turn, that helps my upper body to come forward. Now, in regards to binding angles and position, right here is where you can see that my pelvis, instead of just executing a squat into the turn, I'm actually rotated forward and my knees are bent, and my pelvis or my butt is actually moved more over the back foot heel than it is sitting in between my feet. And this kind of forward momentum, first of all, you can see here quite well how the chest leads the turn, right? Like my jacket is like twisted. You can see that under my arm there. I am rotating through the entire turn. I'm trying to stay ahead of my board. Once I let that board get away from me, I'm landing on my back foot too early, and this journey is over. Edge grip killed. So keep leading through the turn. And this open position is much more efficiently achieved when your back foot binding angle is positive. I know people who can do this with a duck stance. I don't find that very efficient, and I think this particular frame here shows why. Both knees are pointing forwards. If my back foot toes were actually pointing back right here, that would require an insane amount of twist on my back ankle, and I don't think that's a very good idea. So here we go, staying stacked through the heel turn. And you can see again how I use the momentum from that trailing arm. As I stand up, I point that hand down the hill, and it gets me back above the board or on top of the board, however. And now as I get to the flat base moment, this is an important part here. This is where the pinching of my outside hip, the previous outside hip, is going to turn around. Right hip pinched, left hip pinched. So from here onwards, what I want is my hip to move to the inside of the turn, but my shoulders to stay out of the inside of the turn. Obviously that can only be done to a certain degree, but this pinching of the outside hip and bringing down the outside shoulder, which is my left shoulder, is very important to be stacked well above the edge. I'm losing it a little bit there. And here again, boom, using the momentum. I keep bringing that lower arm into the turn and keep it low till I stand up. There's the arc in the body. My upper body wants to get back on top of the board while I'm still on the toe edge. And as soon as getting some air here. As soon as I am back above the board, this changes, right? I stop leaning into the turn. I come forward right here, boom. Very important thing. As soon as the edge is engaged, so I don't dump my mass to the inside of the turn and land on my butt. I need to build this pressure, right? I don't have edge angulation yet. I can't just dump my weight into the turn. In order to build angulation, I need to bring my upper body towards the knees. So you can see here, what I say sometimes to people is aim with the center of your chest for your front kneecap. And I do indeed sometimes touch my front knee or my front thigh with my stomach. That's how small you need to get sometimes to really stay stacked over the edge in a heel turn. Right? Like you want to come forward. So one other thing here that I'm going to point out, torsional twist of the board. I'm standing up and I'm first of all, you can see how I'm on my back foot. Nose lifts off the ground. So I'm standing up off of my back foot and I'm on my back toes and I need to get onto my front heels, and that requires torsional twist of the board. You can see this very well here. How I'm starting to crank the board over. Boom, front foot pressure, there it goes, right? Back foot, front foot, back foot, front foot. As I tap onto my front heel, I'm starting to build angulation of the board, right? I'm driving it around and I'm coming forward from the hip. Outside arm should be lower, should be more above my front knee or front calf, whatever. But anyway, I'm hanging a little bit too far in the turn, but there wasn't any issue here with grip. Really good grippy groomer this morning, no problem. Also the board has a lot of power, very stiff tail for such a little 153. Yeah, so that's basically that. I think these sequences show a couple little things, little details that are useful. Show you one more where I want to talk about fore-aft movement and back foot pressure on this particular board. So the board I'm on here is a Stranda Mackerel 153. It's a little powder fish, 277 millimeter waist, 20 millimeter taper, and the rider placement is a little bit in front of the center of the side cut. So my back foot is closer to the waist of the board than my front foot. Plus the board is 20 millimeter taper. And those kinds of boards, so in order for you to execute a nice turn and weight the side cut center properly, you need to push into it, right? So now when your back foot is located closer to the center of the side cut than your front foot, then that explains why you should have a little more back foot pressure to properly push into the side cut. And I'm not talking, 80% back foot. I'm talking like kind of 60-40, 60% on the back foot, a little bit earlier in the turn than you would normally do that. So to initiate a turn, I'm still on my front foot, but here I'm at the end of a turn and you can see quite well that I'm clearly on my back foot. So boom, here I'm on my front foot, needs to be done. You gotta get forward to initiate any turn. But then on this board with the 20 mil taper asking me to put a bit more pressure on the tail in order for me to not lose grip, and also the back foot being closer to the side cut center, I do move you can see this here, I'm still forward, but here I'm already back. right? So boom, I'm already with my butt and my pressure coming from the knee that is more through the back knee. My hip is quite back, quite over the back foot here. The board asks me to do this. And if I keep this board, if I keep the pressure through the turn under my front foot for too long, I will be feeling tail wash. So 20 millimeter taper is relative, right? Relative to the effective edge length. If you have a board, let's say, let's be silly here, with a meter 50 effective edge, 20 millimeters is not very much. But on a board like this, with just over a meter, I believe, effective edge, 20 millimeters is quite a lot, relatively. The board gets quite a bit narrower over a shorter distance, right? And yeah, that makes for a board that is looser in the tail if you don't account for it. So you can see it again here. As I've engaged my my edge, I'm already starting to move back, in particular on the toe turn. And that kind of explains a little bit what you know from these Japanese guys, the Gentem stick crew, what you consider the surf style that you see. There are other elements to surf style. For me in particular, it's riding above the fall line, finishing your turns properly across the hill. But surf style also is a bit of a thing that simply is a style, as in it looks like surfing. And since surfing is done on the back foot, you cannot pivot a surfboard on its front, on the front foot. You need to get weight over the fins to get the front out of the water and to pivot on your back foot. That's part of what people perceive as the surf style, right? And when you then see what boards those people are choosing, you will see them quite often on those heavily tapered short fat fishes. That's kind of a style over there. So yeah, there you go again. Back foot action clearly. Through the heel turn a little bit less, but clearly standing up from the back foot here. Yeah, so that's a side note on shapes and how you need to ride different shapes. It's well worth it figuring out where you're placed within your side cut on the heavier tapered boards. Well, I think all of the corduroy boards that are heavily tapered, so everything but the auto, you're placed in front of the side cut center. So these boards need to be either, you need to move the bindings back if you don't want that, and I'm talking way back, or you simply need to account for this by moving onto the back foot a little bit earlier in your turn. That makes a lot of sense, and once you experiment with that, you will feel that that you are much more sitting in the turn. It has helped me a lot to realize this. All right, I hope this was helpful, and I hope I was able to answer a few questions that you might have been wondering about in your own riding. Apologies for the footage, not the greatest, filmed with phones on a Greybird day, and then a screen recording with a voiceover diminishes quality again. So I think it was good enough to actually see what I was trying to bring across, but hopefully next time I can get better footage and find better ways to do this. All right, if you like what you've seen, share it with your friends, get the notifications here so you know what's up next. Don't forget to subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you out there. Have a good rest of the season. Bye-bye.